Yo, what's going down, Green Screen Entertainment fans? Your homie Jay Green back right now with my review for Masters of the Universe. Yo, I'm gonna tell y'all like this. I grew up a little bit with He-Man. I'm not gonna act like I was a diehard He-Man fan, but for sure, I was watching that cartoon back in the day. And so in my lifetime, there's been two properties that are pretty much world renowned. When you're a kid and you're playing with some swords, you're either gonna be thinking of Star Wars, lightsaber swag, or you're gonna be raising up that sword in the sky talking about, I have the power. Anyway, this movie was directed by Travis Knight, the same guy that brought us Kubo and the Two Strings and Bumblebee. Arguably one of the best Transformer movies outside of that original, maybe even better than that one. Nicholas Galitzine as He-Man, Camila Mendes as Teela, Idris Elba as Duncan, Jared Leto as Skeletor, and Alison Brie as Evelyn. Now, my overall thoughts on the film, it was okay, right? It wasn't bad, but it really wasn't good. It was right in the middle. Now, this is an Amazon feature film made for the big screen, but honestly, watching it, it felt like it was a little bit more so for the small screen. I feel like this movie's tone was all over the place, and it kind of kept taking me out of the film throughout. What I mean by that is this movie sets up serious situations for the character arcs that we should see followed through, but as it's going along those situations, it wants to throw in some levity here and there. This movie did not do a very good job at that, and I would probably credit that situation to the 5 or 6 writers that this movie had. Damn, that's a lot of cooks in the kitchen. So while some of those jokes and some of those moments of levity could be good on their own in a box, they don't necessarily fit in that scene or in that moment that they're delivered. And that's probably the worst offense that any film can have. When it's trying to be funny and the joke lands flat, ouch, crickets. Another issue that I had with the moments of levity and the character arcs that we're dealing with is Prince Adam. When he's a young kid, he's a bit more on the timid side. He's kind of like a Steve Rogers who's not really confident in what he is capable of doing, right? When he's sent to Earth, and he's growing up on Earth, we don't see any of that. He's sent there as a kid. He loses the sword, right? And he's growing up and he's still dwelling on the idea that, yo, I need to find my sword and I need to get back home. Understandable. However, as he's growing up, he's holding on to this so strongly that he tells every single person that he encounters or that he works with, everyone knows he's all about this, to the point where I'm wondering, like, nobody's had you committed yet, because how do you have a full-time job? How do you even have relationships? How do you have a roommate? How do you have anything that you have? How do you have a gym membership? How do you have all these things if all you're concerned with is finding this sword and making your way back to some other random dimension? I feel like someone like that in a real world setting would have been committed by this point in time. But the movie just plays it up for laughs. But in doing that, it doesn't really feel like a realistic world. Even though he's on our world at this time, it doesn't really feel like a realistic world that he's in. So that kind of took me out of the film. Now, I understand I'm nitpicking a He-Man movie. I know what I signed up for. But the thing is, if you look at a movie like Dungeons and Dragons, a movie that's set in that fantasy realm with all types of different creatures and characters and situations and magical powers, while that movie is in its own fantasy world and it doesn't touch normal Earth, if you will, they still were able to blend the stakes, the character development, the character moments, the serious situations, along with the levity and the fun and the excitement. And I feel like this movie just didn't meld those things together very well. So seeing him in those situations on Earth and act like that definitely made the first portion of this film a little hard to get through. Another issue that I had with this movie was the look. Something that I was kind of concerned with when I started seeing more of the trailers. It looked too polished and too fake and not a world that was lived in. We've been sitting through like 15, 20 years of Marvel beauty. We got Zack Snyder's 300. You got 3 phenomenal Lord of the Rings films that still hold up visually today. And we got Avatar. So knowing all of the beauty and fantasy of Eternia, that shit should have looked phenomenal, awe-inspiring, dope as shit. But it looked like they just relied on green screen and the volume. And I ain't with that. I also wasn't really feeling the musical score. The music to me was kind of bland and whack, and it did not feed in to the excitement and the moments of He-Man. When he's yelling, I have the power, and the fights are going down, and maybe a character's at risk of dying or they win the battle, I should really feel super emotionally charged at this time. Like, fuck yeah, let's go. And the music just never brought me there, right? I feel like they were trying to hit some of that 80s swag from back in the day. And I get that for sure, but I feel like you should have made it a bit more stylized and cinematic and dramatic for the fantasy and the epic that is He-Man. Now, I know some people are going to be excited for the Queen song that plays toward the end of Masters of the Universe, but I'm going to tell y'all like this. While Queen is a fly band, just because you got some dope music in a movie, it doesn't make that movie any better. It can add to the movie's greatness where it's at. James Gunn has showed us that, but it doesn't make the film. So too little, too late. I would have rather had this be a little bit more 80s synth swag leading into some fantasy type elements. That shit would have sounded fly. You could picture it. Now I know what you're thinking, but Jay Green, did you like anything? Because you said it wasn't bad, but you just said it wasn't that good. Jared Leto's Skeletor was dope as fuck. I loved Skeletor in this movie. In fact, Skeletor was a highlight for me, right? His laugh was very reminiscent of his Joker portrayal, but it worked with this. His voice was fly. His body was sick. The skull and the eyes, dope as fuck. His power levels, sick, right? His jokes, I don't really feel hit and landed only because the way he was sometimes didn't feel like he was in the right movie. Like I said, they didn't really meld it together very well. But when he was jokey, I could see the potential there. And when he was ultra villainous, that hit too. I just wish they would have blended it better together. Nicholas G as He-Man, he was great. Idris Elba is always great. So nothing really wrong with the acting. That was fly. But Skeletor, definitely a highlight. Even more than He-Man. Now I want to give a big shout out to Sashir Zamata, if I'm saying her name correctly. She is like a character that you're like, who the hell was that? She played Adam's boss on Earth, like in the HR department. She was phenomenal. It was like her and Skeletor are the best parts of this film. And that's saying a lot, okay? She was great, hilarious, loved her facial expressions. Everything about her was top notch. She was a bright and shining point in this film. So big ups to her. Another highlight was He-Man's fight with Skeletor in the end of the movie. Now, that shit was fire. That almost was worth the price of admission. Just that fight between He-Man and Skeletor. And I wish we had more of that type of fight throughout the film. Like whenever there's a battle, I wish it felt like that. The way that Travis Knight filmed it, dope. Trust. So between Adam's boss, Skeletor, some of the visuals, and that end fight, if you check this out in the movie theater, I think you're gonna have a good time. Now, who do I think this movie is going to be good for? I think this movie is going to be great for kids. Clearly, this movie is targeted at children, right? PG-13 type movie, silly jokes here and there, lights, colors, sounds, fantasy, kid shit all day long. So if you bring the kids to this movie, they probably gonna love the hell out of it. But unfortunately for me, someone who grew up with He-Man, who had the action figures and shit like that back in the day, I wanna see He-Man adapted into 2026. Give me some of the old, but mix it in with some of the new. And I feel like this movie was not writing that line well enough. And it makes me think of that Thanos quote from Endgame.
And as long as there are those that remember what was, there will always be those that are unable to accept what can be.
Had they been able to see what the potential was, if they would have adapted some of those things, concepts in the best way possible, just like what they did with the original X-Men movie, think about it, then this movie could have bankrolled. If you're a fan of He-Man, I think you'll get just enough out of it to say that it wasn't bad, but it wasn't really that good. But you'll still leave the theater with a smile on your face and not feel like you wasted your time completely. But if not, you could definitely catch it on streaming and you'll be just fine. But yo, what say y'all? How many of y'all are old heads like me and you remember He-Man growing up? Are y'all excited for this movie? You gonna check it out? You should. Come back, comment below, let me know what y'all thought. Let's chop it up. Once again, remember, your homie's trying to get to 1,000 subscribers before the end of the year. I think I'm sitting at about 699 right now. So do me a favor, like, subscribe, and share this video with anybody who might be on the fence. Your homie, Jay Green, I'm out.